So we have predetermined order. We'll start with Bob Burns for his opening statement, and we'll work our way down to the end of the table. So Bob, take it away. Oh, one other thing. If you would like to stand during your opening and closing statements, it's fine. There's a microphone here, but I remind you, you only have 90 seconds, so you can't pontificate after that. So sit or stand, Bob, whatever you want to do.
Well, I'm good right here, I guess.
Okay.
And typical opening remarks are, I am Bob Burns, and I am a candidate for the Corporation Commission, currently serving on the commission. I have a great concern about what I call the cloud that has been spread over the commission in the last 2 to 3 years. And I think that the way to correct that problem is transparency, and that is probably my number one priority in this campaign, is to assure that in the future there is transparency with the dealings, especially in the election cycles for candidates to the Corporation Commission. Another interest area of mine is technology. I came from a computer programming background, and the technology that is occurring especially in the electrical generation arena is, I believe, unprecedented for the time that we've been in the business of producing electricity. So that is a high interest level of mine. I think it's a game changer. I think microgrids as part of that technology package is probably going to be right at the top of the list in making that game change occur. So very interesting time, I believe, in the electrical generation world, and I'd like to be a part of that, and so that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for those opening statements. Now, we could start with a boring question like, why are you the best candidate for the job? We're not going to do that. Let's talk about what a few you mentioned in your opening statement. There have been many media stories, many allegations of public utilities, solar rooftop companies, others funding campaigns of ACC candidates with dollars that are not disclosed to the public. Some call it dark money, some call it freedom of speech. Let's start with Commissioner Burns. Is this appropriate? Is it not? What should be done, if anything, to deal with this matter?
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled that it is okay for the utility corporation to participate financially in the campaign. So I certainly have no problem with that. I think it's not necessarily the right thing to do, but that's the law as ruled by the court. However, I think that if a utility participates in the election of a commissioner, then that utility needs to report in a timely manner so that the ratepayers and the voters understand where they're coming from. And that's what I say is what I said earlier, that is part of the transparency issue that needs to be brought out to the forefront. We need to have, the voters need to be educated as to what's going on during the election cycle. The money should not be hidden, and it is, as I said, legal for them to do it, so I'm not advocating or trying to stop any of that. I disagree with it. I think it's not the right thing to do to have a regulated utility participate in the selection of those who regulate them.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think the bottom line issue is undue influence of the regulators. And so that has to be prevented at all costs if possible, because undue influence leads to unfair advantage. And the unfair advantage that results is the utility being unfair to the ratepayer through the advantage that they might have in the regulator. So it is a critical issue. It doesn't keep me or any other commissioner from working on the problems of the water community. We were all involved in the vote that took place to fix the problem. So this has to be fixed in my mind.
Okay. Do you agree that distributed generation, or more specifically rooftop solar, results in cost shifts onto non-solar customers. Why or why not? Bob Burns?
Yeah, well, first of all, the question about shift, I believe there is a shift, but there's shifts all throughout the whole system. There are many shifts. And as candidate Dunn referred to, there is a docket at the commission to gather the facts and try to determine maybe what other shifts exist as well. It's open to information and input from whoever wants to contribute. But I would point out that there is, I believe, a possible shift in the future, relative to water. We are about to go into shortage on the Colorado River, and when we do, Arizona is the first one to take a hit as far as the allocation in the Central Arizona Project Canal. Now, the current method of thermal generation uses a lot of water. The renewable energy generation resources don't use water. So are we going to have a shift where the cost of water goes up because of the way we generate electricity? Or are we going to rely more on a less water intensive form of generating electricity to save money on the use on water? So to me, that's a potential shift on the horizon. These are all things that we need to look at. We need to look at everything. We don't just need to focus on the rooftop solar issue alone. There are other shifts throughout the system that we have in generation.
Okay. Well, speaking of the speed round, we have to go to Bob and Rick and Tom, right, for the rooftop solar leasing question. Do any of you guys think it should be regulated by the ACC?
Well, as a small business person operating a regulated business and going into the legislature with a conservative credential, it's always been my attempt to find ways to reduce regulation rather than increase it. And so I think that's the thought process that I would use as we go forward in this regard. So we need to be able to free up the entrepreneurial juices that exist out there in our community, and let people come up with the ideas to make the entire system better, in my opinion. And that's helped by having less regulation, not more.
Okay. What should be the ACC's role in making better use of water supplies in Arizona?
Well, I think we have a critical role, and as I mentioned earlier, on the Central Arizona Project reduction and allocation, we have an opportunity possibly, again, after a full review of all of the facts, whether or not we move towards a broader use of renewables in the portfolio or not, just based on the issue of water. And the infrastructure problem, I think, is part of that. I mean, if you have bad infrastructure, you're going to have water loss, et cetera. So I think the effort that has been taken at the commission so far, Commissioner Tobin mentioned the I don't know if we call it a console, a committee, the whatever, but it's a important tool to have in the toolbox. I think the issue about consolidation, if possible, again, probably on a case-by-case basis, needs to be examined, and all of those things would have a positive effect if they're done right as far as the water situation is concerned.
Okay. Back when I was covering politics at the Republic, I think it was before Howie Fisher had his AARP card. It was that long ago. Most people thought of the ACC as a place to go to extend your political career, improve your legislative pension, and it was a really quiet place. Nothing bad or good, not a lot of publicity. That's obviously not the case anymore. If you were to read the media, and I know a lot of times people blame the media, but there's been plenty of stories about how the Corporation Commission is mired in dysfunction. infighting and people not getting along. So I want to know from each and every one of you, and we'll start with Boyd Dunn, if elected or re-elected, how will you change or improve that perception or image? Bob Burns? Now, I'm not saying it's dysfunctional. I'm just telling you what I'm reading in the media. So if you can address that image and what you can do to change that perception of the place.
Well, I think the first major step that has to be taken is we need to have transparency as to who is influencing the decisions of the commission. So,
And what's the best way to do that,
to
if
me,
I could
that's a
follow up?
giant step.
What's the
Well,
best way to,
transparency is reporting. Reporting is a method of assuring transparency. So,
Okay.
to me, that's a key issue. We got to get the public trust back on to the point where it believes that the commission is independent and not unduly influenced.
all right, let's do our closing statements, and we'll start with Andy Tobin and work our way down Boyd Dunn and end up with Bob Burns. Last but certainly not least, Bob Burns.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank everyone here for being here. Appreciate the opportunity to address all you. I want to be able to continue my efforts at the commission. I think, as I've said over and over again, transparency is critical in recovering the health of the commission in my mind. I want to be able to continue my investigations into technology as it continues to develop. As I said before, I think it's a game changer. I think the business model of the utilities is going to change, and so I want to be a part of being able to affect how that works for the benefit of the ratepayers. My webpage is bobburns.gop, so I would direct you to that as an easy way to learn more. And also am running as a traditionally funded voluntary funds. And so would appreciate any help I can get in that regard as well. And obviously, the vote is the big thing, so would appreciate your vote and support. Thank you.
Can we get a round of applause for all these candidates?